fills people up, both physically and spiritually. She brings deep conversations into culinary experiences. It all started with popcorn, and before that, with degrees in biology, chemistry, and informatics, and her role at Vanderbilt. But food, she found, was an equalizer. She was exploring it 3 years ago when her life suddenly changed. A tragic car accident made Kirbee the primary caregiver for her now disabled mother. So she's doing a delicate dance right now, nurturing people in her culinary events, while also providing for the woman who gave her everything. This is Kirbee Miller, the Nourisher. Hey, Kirbee.
Hello there.
Thanks so much for being with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and cheers, by the way.
Yes.
Never too early for this kind of thing.
Right.
Okay, so let's get started here. I wanted you to be a part of this season because I talk so much about purpose, finding purpose, sometimes making the transition to purpose, because a lot of times it's not what we're already doing. It's not what we're already living.
That's right.
And so we do have to make a conscious choice. And to me, you represent someone who is in the middle of that, right? Like you had this life. You said, this isn't everything.
That's right.
How do I make it what I want it to be? And you're still sort of feeling your way through that process.
Absolutely.
So let's kind of start from the beginning, where you were, because you had this amazing job with Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
Yes. So I love having these types of conversations because we often think we're alone in things, or like we have this odd mix of ingredients that you're like, well, how do I figure this out? And everyone else seems to be figuring out their lives. So I think these conversations are so important. So yes, I had an amazing career at Vanderbilt that I loved, that was fulfilling in some ways. And there always was this undercurrent, though, of there's more. The things that come naturally to me, they're nourishing to me, but then I was seeing how they were of service to other people. And so with that, I started kind of cultivating this lifestyle brand on the side, and that was kind of my outlet. But there came a point in life where life was life, and it threw a curveball where a tragic incident kind of entered my family's lives, and with one phone call, everything changed. And in the midst of navigating that tragedy, that undercurrent that you would think sometimes you would just put a pin in those dreams or those ambitions, actually became stronger. And I really just...
Why?
Yes, because I've gotten curious about that. That's one thing life has taught me, is get curious. When you feel unsure, when you feel upset, when you feel jealous, get curious.
Yeah, why do I feel this way?
Why do I feel this instead of just like thinking I'm this crazy bad person? Get curious. So for me, I think it's because something that I'd always known here, that life is finite and you seize the day, I was really having to deal with on a day-to-day basis. In that incident that happened, both my stepfather and mom were critically injured in a car accident. And so I was touching, seeing, smelling, having to make decisions every day for a scenario that wasn't planned.
Yeah, that's 2019, wasn't it?
That's right, going into the first day of 2019. So for me, I think that was the why. Because we can say that we know that life is short and we have all these dreams and ambitions, but when you're really seeing that every day, when you're seeing people who did all the right things and had pushed so many things off for retirement, and when you're seeing that life just did what it does, it throws those curveballs. For me, that was it amplified the urgency to really sink into that calling a bit more, instead of just kind of flirting with the notion.
It's interesting because I feel like that sort of wake-up call that you had almost came a year and a half earlier than the rest of the world. Like the rest of the world had that wake-up call with COVID, it feels like. You know, when our calendars got cleared and we were left with just our thoughts.
That's right.
You know? And we had to say, is this really what I want? But you almost were coming into this earlier. So in a way, you're helping others, right? You're helping other people who maybe came a year and a half later going, wait a minute, is this what I want to do? Is this the timeline I want to do it on? So how many people have come out of the woodwork to look to you?
Oh my goodness.
Like, for help and support?
So many. The text messages, phone calls, or through other podcast interviews, the notes that come after where people are saying, wow, I really needed to hear that. Because I think we get this weird idea that one day everything will just align.
Let's dig into this, please.
We kind of fool ourselves into thinking like, okay, I'll kind of plan for it, but I'll get this giant sign, or the conditions will be right. The conditions are never 100% perfect. But if you know that you're meant to do more, and more isn't always grandiose and I want to be a star, I want to be this. If you know that you're meant to do something different that's more nourishing to you, you feel like you're on autopilot just to make it through every day, those are things to really pay attention to, no matter what conditions you find yourselves in. So I really have been on the other side of numerous phone calls, email chains. People have found me on Instagram just to say, wow, I have felt kind of untethered and like I'm just free floating. And this helped me have a little bit more of an anchor. And for me, that is reaffirming.
Yeah.
Because I've always had that type of relationship with people in my close circle, but part of that undercurrent was this pull, this calling to do that on a larger scale, just to help people navigate transitions.
Yeah, I do think that's a hallmark of purpose too. I mean, it's something that I talk about a lot, about purpose is never about the me, it's about the we. It's from a place of service.
That's right.
Purpose has to be something that enriches everyone.
That's right.
Or it's not purpose. Purpose is not ego based, you know? And so to hear you say that of like, I need to do this and I need to do it for other people,
That's right.
Like I must do the work. It's my duty to do the work so I can help other people
That's right.
see that there's another side to this.
That's right. That's right. And finding some type of hope, even if your life has felt like it's shattered. For me, it's kind of like, okay, how do we reorganize these pieces? And how do you have the courage to investigate some of those things that have been a part of your life, that maybe you made these agreements or settlements like, this is just a part of my life. Well, how do you have the courage to say, well, maybe not anymore?
Yeah.
And that is not easy, but it's necessary.
Yeah. Well, how do you have the courage to do that?
I believe, from my own personal journey and then just kind of walking along with others' journeys, your courage comes from knowing that the bigger picture, the bigger goal, the bigger draw has value. And the life that you're living, if you feel like you're on autopilot or living less than, it's not serving you and it's not serving others. So that is a courageous act to be able to say, this period of discomfort is well worth it. And for me, I've seen it happen time and time again. And we make these narratives up in our head. Like, what are they going to say? What are they going to think? How will I survive? And it's like, just use that courage to power through. And what you actually need will be magnetized towards you. I've seen that happen in my own life.
That's another times. Okay, so that is another what I call like pillar of purpose is
That's
like
right.
the magnetism that comes with purpose, because it just happens. And that's actually how I started to find this in the first place. It's because I started doing stories at the news station with people who I couldn't figure out why I was drawn to them. And finally, after years of doing this very particular type of story, these profile stories, one night when I couldn't sleep and I'm staring up at the ceiling, it's like, boom, it hit me. It's purpose. I am drawn to purpose in all of these people. That's what they all have. That's what I want. So then it became this thing of like, wait a minute. If they have purpose, how did they find purpose? And then I said, no one talks about finding purpose.
That's right.
You know,
That's
this is what I've got to do right now. And so then it became this like, I got to find people. I've got to find all these people and I got to bring them together and we got to talk about it. We got to talk about the dark times. We got to talk about when there's like, it's easy to look at someone who's already successful after a transition and say, well, okay, well, they did it. They did it. They're on the other side. But to me, part of what's so interesting about your journey right now is you're still in it. Like you're not on the other side of it, right? Like you're still in it. So how did you get like from, actually, let's back it up to this point. When the point came, like you were leading people at Vanderbilt, very prestigious place to work in Nashville, and with great visibility nationally. When you said, I'm going to leave this, what was the first reaction you got from anyone and everyone?
I'll tell you a few different pockets.
Love it. Let's do it.
So from people who have been in my inner circle, kind of pre-tragedy, post-tragedy, who know me well, their response was, it's about time.
Yeah, finally.
We've been telling you. In fact, prior to communicating that decision, I had just landed and completed a really huge project. And that led to a conversation for a role that felt like an ideal role. Something that in one part of my brain was like, yes, this is what you've worked for. And prior to communicating that decision, I told someone who I consider a friend and mentor, who knows me well, knows kind of my design well, and I told her about it. And I was expecting her to say, oh, wow, congratulations.
Yeah.
You know, we kind of look for those external validations so we can say, whew, okay, I don't have to do that courageous thing yet. And she said, she looked me dead in my face. And we need people like this in our lives. She said, I wish I could be happy for you.
Oh.
She said, but you and I both know that this is just going to prolong you doing what you know you need to do.
Whoa. And what did you do? Were you like, yep, yep? Or did you just like stare at her like?
Yeah, it was that deeper knowing that was like, okay. But I'm so grateful for moments like that, because we often just, like I said before, we just flirt with our zone of genius, with our purpose. We visit it, we get lit up, and then we go back to what we think we have to do. And so I was so thankful for her, and that was kind of the response from some people in my personal life. When I communicated that at work, there was the initial, okay, and then we were in a Zoom type of situation. We were still working at a distance. And so there was a communication, and then when we told the team, there was people started crying. And it was just like this big emotional thing. But for me, where we make up these narratives like, oh no, I'm leaving this. Instead, there was an extreme peace.
Oh God, what a relief, huh?
To say, I can end this well.
Yeah.
And I that's another conversation when we talk about purpose and transitions. We don't really understand how to transition.
Okay, let's
so
talk
that
about
requires us to get curious, really lean into our true design. And if you don't know that about yourself, that takes some root work. And then you have to realize that transition is natural. Anything that's living in life is growing.
Or dying.
Yeah, or dying. But if you
choose it to be living.
if you and I tried to go dig up some of our pants from 4th grade and put them on, that wouldn't work out so well.
Oh God, no.
You know, and so what fit you at one time isn't meant to fit you as you grow. So for me, that transition can feel uncomfortable, but it should feel liberating in a sense. It should feel peaceful in a sense, and scare you a little bit. But just the gracious words from the people on my team and the larger team, all the way up to our C-suite folks that I worked with on a regular basis, who poured into me to tell me what my journey with the organization meant, beyond just the professional component, what it meant to them to see a daughter showing up for parents who were impacted by a tragedy, yet still navigate a work situation in the middle of a pandemic. And just those words were affirming, because how I decided to show up in that context in the middle of the hardest time of my personal life, it helped me to know that left a mark for them, hopefully left an example for them, and that I could end that chapter well in transition. So that was kind of the feedback that happened from a personal and professional standpoint.
Yeah, and it's worth noting, I mean, your mother and stepfather had that terrible accident, but you took on a different role after that. I mean, you are the primary caregiver now.
Right.
And I think you're living a life at this point that many of us will eventually live, but you're living it now earlier. And so I think in a lot of ways too, those older people that were saying, wow, amazing, good for you, that's also going to be there in their future, and it's just not there yet. And so you're kind of shining a light for people. You are the shining light, I feel like, for people to already see, all right, I can do this. And so what has that been like to take on all of the stuff that you have to do for your mom, and then at the same time try to find your path do for your mom and do you at the same time. I mean, that has to take a lot of courage, I would say. From my vantage point, I think it takes a lot of inner work and a lot of inner conversations. But what would you say it takes?
I would agree with that, and I'm thankful for the inner work journey that I had started prior to this happening, where I really took the deep dive to look at some of the hard things in my past and some of the limitations that maybe I felt were keeping me boxed in. I'd already started that journey. I'd already started the journey to cultivate a gratitude practice, which sounds so kind of foofy to people.
No, please. I like foofy. I do foofy.
That's really the foundation. So those seeds had already been planted, and I'm so thankful in hindsight, because when you get a phone call like that and it rocks your whole world and you just find yourself in a completely different context. And so I'm not going to say it's easy every day. It's absolutely not. It's an absolute roller coaster. Because you have children, I don't have children, so you know what it is to take care of someone outside of yourself, even when you're tired, you're sick, you're busy, all of those things. That's right. And so for me, it was really challenging, especially in the middle of a pandemic when things are changing every day. You're at an organization that people are looking to be leaders, and we're trying to get creative with how we use our space, the stress there. To wake up in the morning and know that before I can really do anything for myself, there's a medication schedule, there's a diaper to be changed, there's a bath to be given. There's a lot that has to happen outside of yourself. So for me, there were so many days that just felt like, wow, how did these cards?
Yeah, and where am I? How do I find myself
here? How do I
here?
find myself?
Yeah.
And so what really did help me is that gratitude practice, and continues to help me because, as you mentioned, I'm still in the thick of this, and different affirmations. And I know people might think, oh, they're really cute on coffee mugs and t-shirts, but they're even better when they're in your mind and heart. So one that
I want to hear your affirmations, and I want to hear how you do them.
Yes. So for me, when I wake up, I try to really just be present, and I had to start with something as small as, okay, I'm in a safe place. The way that my body feels on this mattress, being aware of that, because many of us get really good at dissociating from like our actual being. And then starting with gratitude there.
Right.
And then I'm a to-do list kind of person. So you wake up and you start running your to-do list, but that can be deflating sometimes.
Yeah.
Because you can feel like you're on a hamster wheel. So one affirmation or mantra that helps me in the morning is, it feels the same, but it's not the same.
Okay, well, what does that mean to you?
And it feels the same because we're waking up at the same time.
Yeah.
The to-do list has its core things that have to be done.
Okay.
And so it feels the same, but it's not the same because it is a new day. There are new opportunities, there are new people, there are new resources that weren't available before, and I'm not the same. And we have to remind ourselves of that because it's very easy to run the same program. So that helps me to wake up with a new energy, because you have to have something that you get excited about, something to look forward to, instead of just feeling like you're in Groundhog's Day, just running the same day over and over. And then another thing that has helped me is to shift from just, this is a heavy responsibility.
Oh, it's incredibly heavy.
This is not what you think you're going to do in your early 30s.
This is heavy for you.
And it is.
Very heavy.
It
and
is.
for anyone, honestly, who's in this situation.
Yes. And for me, what's also been helpful is to think about honor. To shift from, oh, it's just me, but just being able to have an honor to walk this path with them. That doesn't make it easy.
I've got chills because I think how much grace you have to choose to see it the way that you're seeing it.
But it is absolutely an honor. And for me, I just think about two people who were so fiercely independent, and within seconds to have that removed, and everything about their life. I feel like my life has changed. Everything about their lives has changed. And to be able to walk that path, to honor who they were as people before this, to be able to give them hope that this is what it feels like today, but I'm partnering with you. I say this to my mom all the time, who has regained some verbal skills.
I was going to ask you if she's able to speak.
Yes. I ask her, okay, I'm here, you're here. Are you still willing to partner with me to move forward? because to me, honor is giving people that option and agency and authority. We all want that. And so for me, on the days where I feel like I could literally just melt into this mattress and just let the world go on, it's like, okay, I get up not just for me, but for them and the people that we impact. And so it's been a journey.
Yeah, I believe that.
It's been a journey, but it's cracked me open in the best ways.
How about it's popped you up? Let's talk about popcorn.
Yes.
Let's talk about popcorn.
Let's talk about popcorn.
Like, this is something that I don't even fully understand about your journey, but I love this. So let me just start with a personal story.
Yes.
I grew up with my dad. Let me start it this way, actually. I did not have popcorn from a bag until I was maybe 18 years old, and I was in college.
Okay.
My dad is a fiercely proud popcorn maker.
Okay.
Even his grandpa name is Pop Pop for his popcorn.
Okay. It's a legacy kind of
thing. It is popcorn's a legacy in the Lowry household. I'm just here to tell you.
I love it.
So when I learned that part of your journey started with popcorn, I was like, I need to know more, because for me, popcorn is love and connection. It's family time at the end of the night. Like, that's what all of the popcorn represents for me. So tell me about such a funny question. I know in my whole life I've never asked this question. Tell me about your popcorn journey.
Yes, I enjoy being the oddball. And so popcorn was not a part of some vision that I had. I will give you the story in a nutshell. So about 4 years ago, I was a part of a large-scale software implementation at Vanderbilt, and that required all hands on deck.
Yeah, hours and hours and hours.
Hours. A huge, huge project. And there was one weekend where a lot of us leadership team were going to be at work on a Saturday, starting at 5:45 in the morning.
Yeah.
And I woke up at 3 o'clock that morning, and I had to decide between going back to sleep, and then if you oversleep once you've gotten up, that's the worst feeling.
Oh, totally. Yep.
So I got up and I was walking around the house, and it was dark, and I was like, we're going to need snacks to get through the day.
Yes. The woman after my own heart.
Okay.
I am always into the snacks. Like, I bring all the drinks, all the snacks.
Yes.
Food is connection.
Food is connection, and it creates just this camaraderie, and it's like, hey, you're hangry, get in there, get some snacks.
Yeah.
So I created this popcorn called Cajun Pop. At that time, I didn't have a name. I just was at 3:30 in the morning blending up spices, putting them on the popcorn. So I go, we work the day, somebody opens the container, it's gone in like 20 minutes. It was a huge container too. And they're like, hey, don't come back without more of that. So the next meeting we had, there was some more popcorn. And right alongside this huge project, I was still crazy enough to be doing events out in the community. This is pre-COVID. For my lifestyle brand. So I was at Williams-Sonoma and Pottery Barn and Macy's, and I would just kind of take the popcorn as I'm doing my demonstrations and talking to people about the brand, and then people were like, how do I buy it? And I'm like, it's not for sale. It's just a snack. And then there was one event, it was a female empowerment event, so I was like, oh, I'm all about that. And I donated these little snack bags of popcorn.
Yeah.
And it had my Instagram handle on it. After the event, later on that night, I get this message from another female business owner in Nashville. And she said, I want to incorporate your popcorn into what I do with my company. And I said, oh my goodness,
great.
Thank you. Glad that you love it. It's not for sale. Because I'm not a popcorn person.
Yeah, like this isn't the brand. This isn't it.
This is just a little side thing. She wrote me back and she said, you don't understand.
You're like, oh, excuse me.
Oh, okay. She said, I'm going to give you money. You give me popcorn. Thus, that started me on this journey to figure out, okay, well, how do we create this vertical and make this a something, which for me, I think is a humbling thing too, because there's not an event that I can go to in Nashville, or now it's gone into other places where people aren't like, popcorn if they see me, and I'm like, this is humbling.
Isn't that wild?
Yes.
Like, you never thought. Ever.
Yes. And it's like this little tangential thing, and God is funny. Because having degrees in biology, chemistry, and informatics, you don't think people would lead with popcorn.
You're like, I'm a smart woman, I swear to you.
And meaning and all of these things. But it's something as simple as that has created community and connection.
Yeah.
The popcorn has literally gone all over the world.
Yeah. It's been in Grammy bags.
Yes.
Like, this is crazy.
Yes. And it's been a part of some really neat events. And so for me, that's, as we talk about transition and all of these things. I had to take ego
Yeah.
and tell it to take a back seat and just get really curious and open and lean into, okay, this is not something that I saw, but let's see where this can go and where can this go alongside these other paths that I'm on. So yes, that's how the popcorn started.
Yeah, yeah. And then I love too that with Kirbee Kitchen, like you've made it not just about food. I mean,
That's right.
it's the food. What does food do? It brings people together, but it allows you then to have conversations. So
right.
how obviously the popcorn brought people together, but how do you use it now? Like this way of having conversations, and what kind of conversations are you having with people?
Absolutely. So for me, food is an equalizer. And I saw that power very early on. I started cooking when I was 5 years old. And it invites people into a moment without having to qualify for the time. You don't have to lead with, oh, I'm so-and-so, or I'm this, I'm important. If you're around really good food.
Yeah, you get to talk about the food.
You talk about the food. And then you start leading into meaningful conversations. And so that's why I really love the food component. And the kitchen component really transcends a physical kitchen.
Yeah.
It's more concept. Because for many of us, that's where heartfelt conversations happen. That's where wisdom is kind of passed on. So for me, it's more of a concept. So the Kirbee Kitchen concept has taken me into spaces also all over the world to really invite people into who am I?
Answering for themselves, or answering, you telling them you are this person?
Answering for ourselves. And I've seen where people, like, over good food and guided conversation, you can kind of see they're like, I've never said that out loud before. So to be able to hear their own voice and give language to who they really are, not who they've kind of created and the quick sound bites that we articulate to be like, whew, do you accept me now? But when we dig deeper around good food and around guided conversation and questions that go a little bit deeper, people really get to unpack, who am I really? And who am I outside of all of these extra things?
Yeah, the titles, right? The labels, who am I outside? What other kinds of guided conversation? When you say that, I imagine you have a guide that you like to guide people through. So what is that guide?
And it really depends on the event. So I have had the opportunity to lead private small events, private large events, and then corporate events. Some of the corporate events are some of my favorites.
Really?
Because
it kind of surprises me. You know, I would think it would be the opposite.
Yes. And it's the private ones I love, and I have some really cool plans for those. But the corporate, I love it because people kind of come in ready to just be structured. They're ready to, this is a work event, and I'm going to be work-like.
And I'm going to pretend I'm taking notes that people think I'm really engaged.
That's right, exactly. And we do these things to ourselves sometimes where we look for reasons why we don't belong.
Yeah, that's like self-sabotage.
Yes. And we think it's actually protecting ourselves. Like, whew, if I find the reason why I shouldn't be with them, then I won't be disappointed. I won't be embarrassed. And so we seek those things out instead of reasons why we do belong. So in my corporate events, you see everybody, especially in COVID, we were kind of in Zoom. So I'm like looking at these little boxes all over and you see people like, they're kind of stiff and they're like, all right. And so I start off and I say, okay, I have a few rules, and you see everybody like, I knew it. Yeah. There are rules. There are rules. And I say, I kind of have a couple of rules. So I need you to answer these questions before we get started. It gets really intense.
Yeah.
And I say, are you human? And you see them kind of like, you should just ask us if we're human. And then a couple people are chuckling in the little boxes. And then I say, do you get hungry? And then you kind of see people, and I'm like, that's it. Let's go.
Yeah.
No one gets left behind, and we're going to be in this together.
Yeah.
But it's important to set that tone at the beginning. Like, you have everything you need.
Yeah, it's
in
already
order
here
for this to be successful.
Well, and that's such a deeper message too, and I think we forget that a lot, especially in a journey of any kind of self-discovery. It doesn't even have to be a journey where you say, I'm going to find my purpose.
That's
but
right.
I mean, even if you're like, something's missing here, or who am I in all this? Like, I need to find self. The beginning of that journey has to be with an understanding that everything you need is right here. Yes. And matter of fact, the guide is also already here.
That's
and
right.
You were listening to that. Otherwise, you would have never embarked on the journey to begin with.
That's right.
Do you find that you have to remind people of that? Or is that like, is there a light bulb moment in your events where you see like the head nods where people are like, oh, they got it.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah, I see it both ways. I see some people, because everyone's on a different point of their path, you see some people say, huh, like, yep, I knew it. And now you're articulating it, so it crystallizes for them. They have the aha moment. And then for other people, it takes a little bit more conversation and more questions that maybe they felt as though, oh, this is like a silly woo-woo question. But then as we unpack it a little bit more, they're like, huh, this actually resonates for me. So I see it happen both ways. And for me, I want people to leave those events, whether it's virtual or in person, really full physically and happy.
Yeah.
But then full on this kind of different level.
Like a spiritual level?
That's right. Where they're nourished in that way. So that this won't solve all your life's problems, but maybe you have some additional tools and resources to go on your authentic path.
Yeah.
That's my goal. That's my intention in anything.
To bring
that I do.
nourishment?
That's right. That's right.
I love that. Well, this is a perfect segue to play my favorite game, which is the best time, worst time game. And you've answered one of the questions, but it's okay. We're going to start from the beginning. Are you ready to play?
Let's get it.
Okay, so this is the best time, worst time game.
Okay.
When was the best time in your life?
Oh my goodness.
Pressure's on.
The pressure's on. I would say there's so many moments that are meaningful, but I'll share this one that's happened recently. Through connection and authenticity, had an opportunity to go to Italy in September to do what I love and to be around like-minded people. And that opportunity came out of me being more authentically myself and making connections. Yeah. And this was in the midst of just some really hard things personally. I had just articulated, hey, I'm leaving my corporate job. And so for me, one of the best moments was when I was standing on the porch of this insanely gorgeous villa.
Yo, of course. You've got to be in a villa.
In the middle of Tuscany.
Oh, wow.
And I'm preparing for this culinary experience with this group of women from around the world.
Oh,
but it's just me.
Oh, wow.
It's just me preparing, and I'm looking out over these lilac fields. And there's just this piece to say, you listened, and this is what happens when you listen.
Oh my God. I'm like, that's so beautiful. I can see what you're describing.
Yes. And none of that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense to me.
To you.
Perfect sense to me.
Yes.
Why do you think it doesn't make sense?
I think, and this is what I love, because being a highly analytical person with a science background, you make it make sense. But then there's this other part where you're like, lean into it. Why it doesn't make sense is because we're still in the pandemic now, but conditions, I wasn't even sure if I was going to get on a plane and go to Italy. Yeah. I just left this job, and it just, on paper, I should have been somewhere like making more plans, right? Not
filling out a spreadsheet.
Right, there's another spreadsheet and an algorithm and a flow chart. So with the inputs, the physical inputs, it may not have made sense. Yeah. But the spiritual deposits, it made absolute sense because I allowed myself to be guided. I allowed myself to be vulnerable. I allowed myself to be honest about my intentions and how I show up in the world and how I choose to use my energy and my currency and what I want that to mean with my time here. And so it made a lot of sense in that type of realm. And so that would be one of the best times where it's just like, my imagination is coming to life.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes, because one of my favorite quotes by Oprah says, nourish whatever makes you feel contented, confident, and connected. An opportunity will rise to meet you. And I felt like I was standing in the middle of that.
You were standing in the middle of contentment.
Yes.
You were literally creating nourishment for others and nourishing yourself at the same time.
Yes.
That's so beautiful.
I have to say that's one of the best.
Quick deviation from this game we're playing.
Okay.
When was the point that you, because following a spiritual path or a heart-led path, soul-centered path, that's a choice. Certainly for someone like you with 3 science-based degrees, right? Analytical degrees, you had to make a choice at some point to stop letting this do all the choosing. Was there a point you made a choice to lead yourself differently?
I would say yes. There's always been this duality, always. And through conditioning, and I think our parents mean well, I learned, well, put the analytical one in the driver's seat, and this creative, more spiritually connected element maybe in the back seat, sometimes in the passenger seat. So I'd never fully abandoned that part of myself is what I'm getting at. I'd always had this kind of private world of exploring things that didn't make 100% black and white sense. There were some times in my life where I felt as though I focused a lot more on the structure, and I felt like I was really just suffocating in plain sight.
Yeah.
And so I learned to return to these other elements. But I would say probably about 5 years ago, right around the time that I decided, like, I'm going to put this idea out in the world more in a formal way, that's when I decided to really allow myself to have true duality. Like, I can lean on these things that have supported me really well. They're analytical.
Right.
I can make you a strategic plan with the best of them. But then also right alongside that, I'm going to allow this other world to have kind of a co-pilot element.
Yeah.
And so that took me on a journey of reading different things and really creating different practices. And for me, that shifted everything. The right types of people and opportunities were attracted where I felt as though there was more of a wholeness, more of an integration of who I am as a person. So I'd say that's probably about 5 years ago that I really made an intentional choice that even though this may not fit into a box for anyone else, I'm going to do these things. I'm going to start being more outwardly forward with some of these things that I'm feeling and thinking. And it's really magical when you do that, because that's of service to other people who have been waiting for this other puzzle piece.
Yeah. Well, they don't know they're waiting for it, but when they see it, something clicks for them. Usually.
That's right.
Usually is how that works, I think. When was the worst time in your life?
Yeah. I would say for me, the worst time was right along with that accident that we talked a little bit about earlier. I have been in healthcare for a really long time. I built amazing relationships at Vanderbilt, was able to get my parents diverted in there. And I was hopeful, you know, in the first few hours after the accident, and kind of going back and forth between the rooms and talking to the providers, and was hopeful. But the absolute worst time was where I felt like that hope just got sucked out, was probably about 6 to 7 hours after the accident. And I was able to talk and get my parents kind of moved up in the CAT scan line, and one of the providers walked around the corner.
And you could just see it, huh? You could see it on their face.
100%.
Yeah.
And they said, "We're so sorry." And they went on to explain about the bleeding that was occurring in my mom's brain, and shortly after that, she would slip into a coma. And so I would say that moment where you've tried to rally all your internal troops and my plans and this and that moment where you're like, you've reached the end of like what you can do.
Yeah. Kirbee, have you ever asked yourself if losing your mom would have been easier than what you're dealing with right now?
I do, and not just from the context of myself, but I also look at the journey. It's hard for her. I do think about that. But here's where I found peace and what I actually know for sure. I don't think any of us can say that our childhoods were picture perfect. Right? In our context, there were specific traumas and issues and things that had happened that were unresolved. And many of us, I think my siblings included and my mom, we had learned how to just persist.
Yeah.
Not healing those things, but persist. And through this process, a lot of that has been untangled. When my mom, because I'm there every day, when she started to regain her cognitive ability and verbal ability, and through what we did every day, that allowed us to have some really hard and challenging conversations.
I bet.
And that allowed her to articulate some things that we never talked about before. And so when you look at peace and resolution
and healing, wow.
I know before her time is over in this realm, I'm thankful that she got that peace. And I know for sure that I'm thankful because, again, with you and your action oriented, you think, oh, that's in the past. I can make this plan. But I know that I wouldn't have been able to fully show up as the person that I'm meant to be with that unresolved portion. So I do think about the ease. It would have been hard in the moment because you're like, oh, wow, that anyone who's lost someone traumatically and suddenly, there's so many questions.
Yeah, right.
And there's moments that you wish that you could have had.
Right.
But I think it's two sides of the same coin. This life doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And so I know someone listening to this who's lost someone suddenly probably could say, oh, wow, how could you ever think that it would be easier? Like, I wish I had those moments. And then for other people who have been in a caregiving capacity over time, for someone who's fully dependent, probably understand it differently. So I think it's just our life paths will help us comprehend that differently. But that's definitely a thought.
Yeah. Yeah, and thank you for answering it so beautifully. And answering it in the way that it was intended. I mean, truly, it was maybe a hard question to answer. So thank you for answering it so beautifully. What's something about your nature that you've overcome or you continue to overcome?
Oh, wow. I think it's that intersection of the wildly creative and analytical. You can kind of be self-sabotaging in some ways and keep yourself small because like, wait, this is what I feel.
Yeah, you're talking
from... make it make sense.
You're talking from two different places.
That's right.
I've had instances of that too, of like my mind is like, no, I'm in charge. And my heart's
right.
like, back off.
That's right. Do you really want what you know, what you say you want? Then it doesn't always make sense. So I would say that's something that I've had to sit with and really get curious about. And a shift for me, and it's a daily practice, is forgiving.
It holds a lot of people back, you know.
Yes.
The choice not to forgive, I think, holds people back from true transformation.
100%.
It's a big one.
And it's not always external. It's forgiving yourself and having grace with yourself. And I've learned to thank some of my limitations and some of those thoughts that you have about yourself, that if you heard someone saying it to your best friend, like, you'd knock them out. If it was, but you say it to yourself. And
that's a good point.
Getting curious about that. Where did this come from? Why is this second nature? But there's just this part of you that tries to protect you, to try to keep you in your norm, kind of keep you in this box that you've created for yourself. But I think there's a point where you realize this box doesn't fit me anymore. So I thank you for trying to keep me safe. I thank you for trying to keep me away from doing something so big, like, because there's this thing like, oh, you know, the higher you rise, the harder you fall. Just all of these things that we do to ourselves. And who are you to do this? And so I've learned to thank those thoughts and get curious, like, you're trying to protect me, but you're not the truth. I wish that 12-year-old me knew that, 19-year-old me knew that. But that's a critical component of why I do what I do and why I invite people into experiences, whether that's over food or conversation or in other consulting work that I do. Invite people into those moments where you can understand who you really are outside of those really, really harsh, critical things that we've layered on top. Who are you really? And you have value there that no one can take away from you. So for me, that would be the biggest thing that I've had to wrestle with and continue to wrestle with.
You're such a nourisher, and I love that. And I love thinking of that as being, you know, a purpose. I've never heard someone use that word, but it's just so beautiful. And I'm such a proponent of naming each of these episodes with this like word picture. I feel like every single one of these names need to create a word picture because it is the deeper meaning. It is the deeper embodiment, the deeper energy. It's all of that. And I just love thinking of you as the nourisher.
Okay, and there it is.
And there it is. Golly. It's like we've workshopped your title just in this hour, and I love it. When did you realize your purpose was your purpose?
Wow. When did I allow myself to agree.
Ooh, maybe that's a better question.
Yeah.
Well,
And I know everyone's different, but I think many of us have known things, but really agreeing with them would require you to be a different version of yourself, and you're just not ready for that. So for me, I've always known, what they say, knowing your knower, that I was meant to do much of what I'm doing right now, but it didn't. How do you put that in a box?
yeah.
Well, how do you put that on LinkedIn?
How do you quantify that?
That's right. That's right. But life has taught me that for me, the things that don't necessarily fit into a discrete description really still are powerful and healing. And so for me, I think I knew that when I started to put those little pieces of myself out into the world, like a little bit, and just the response for people.
Well, there's a reward, right? I do feel like there's like the universe is conspiring in your favor. Like you are meant to do those things. You put a little bit of yourself out there, and it's like, yes,
That's
do
right.
more.
That's right. The response, and people saying, wow, I've never thought about something in this way, or, I haven't had someone who actually sees me, or I feel like I'm empowered to do, or people who've come back after conversations or sessions and have said, this is what I've done, and I've never thought I could do that. So for me, that was that confirmation of purpose. Like, okay, you can be yourself, show up in the world with the science and the woo-woo, and there's a place for that.
And be you.
And be you. Listen, we're going to have an EP come out with a song. But that's what I knew is when I started putting those pieces out into the world, and just the response, like, okay, finally, you've done it.
Kirbee, what's next for you?
That's an excellent question. What's next for me is really continuing to be open
Yeah.
and curious. I know that word, we could use it so many times.
That's my favorite word. I mean, keep going, please.
Because we don't allow ourselves to be curious. We may say, but curiosity.
It requires time and space.
And vulnerability.
Yeah.
And so many of us, just like I said, run the same play every day.
Yeah.
And that doesn't require curiosity.
Yeah.
And it's a false kind of sense of safety. So for me, I'll continue to be curious and continue to speak my own truth and be led and do the right next thing. And that has led to some really neat opportunities that might manifest themselves in this coming year. And I'll just continue to rely on that inner GPS. Yeah. Even if I can't put it into a pretty spreadsheet or algorithm.
You don't need it, right?
That's right.
It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be known. I would venture to say it's more powerful.
It is.
And I think a lot of us don't embrace that because we're almost afraid how powerful it really is.
Absolutely. And I'm here for it. Now. I think life has rocked me to the point where it's like, open your eyes and pay attention, and you don't have to hold on to these false sense, these different things that you thought your identity was made up of. You don't have to anymore. Yeah. And so for me, I just think it's powerful, and I just want to help to create that ripple effect for other people.
You're doing it, girl.
I appreciate you.
Kirbee Miller, thank you.
Thank you.
So what'd you think? Tell me in the comments below, like it, share it with someone who needs to hear it. I'm adding new videos all the time to help you reconnect with self and then prepare for purpose. And since you're here, I've gone ahead and linked my playlist, the episode Amplified. It gives shorter clips from each episode, still though very much power-packed with encouragement. It's all right here. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.